Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling on this Thursday. We are just count them, 2 days away from Notre Dame season. The way to any ends. Joining us for the show, we've had a troll or two this week. We've had some well-mannered, well-behaved Aggies fans pop in at times this week. Just a reminder, keep it civil, sunshine. Whether it's it's all good until someone gets called a jabroni, and if you act like a jabroni, you're not going to be here for long, regardless of who you cheer for. Right. Okay. So I'm Sean Stiers. I'll be your pilot for this solo flight tonight. Vince and Jesse both have other obligations, I suppose. We've got a lot to get to tonight, though. We're going to keep it above the board. We've got some comments from Marcus Freeman that we're going to have to start things out from his noon Zoom media press conference today, not streamed on YouTube. So, unless maybe you've read a little bit about him, and I think Brian might have posted one of the stories that I wrote about it today. I don't know if it's quite up just yet, but that's where we'll start. We also have plenty of we in, we out questions that we are going to get to as well. Tommy says he can't find the we in, we out thread on the board. It's there. I've got it sitting here and ready to go so I can bounce those questions in tonight. Hit the like button if you would on your old YouTube channel as you come into the show tonight. Much appreciated as always. So let's not waste any time because there's a lot to get to. We're going to start with some of the Marcus Freeman comments, and I'll start with the injuries stuff that came up today because Notre Dame announced 3 injuries. 2 of them are going to be season-ending. Taebron Bennie-Powell and Styles Prescod both had shoulder surgery. Well, Bennie-Powell has had the shoulder surgery. Prescod is going to have the shoulder surgery. Tae Johnson is going to miss some time with a broken bone in his foot as well.
Probably both of those guys, and you see it with a lot of freshmen. They have pre-existing injuries that probably started in high school, and when all of a sudden you get them here and their shoulder pops out, or they have shoulder issues, you take an MRI and you say, okay, we have to make a decision. Do we fix it now and have them miss the season but have them back for spring ball, which is so crucial for their development, or do we wait until after the season? And both of those guys, I don't know what the future would have been if they didn't get surgery, but I would say at the moment we felt like they were probably redshirt potential guys, and we thought it was best to just get their shoulders fixed now and have them back for spring ball. As far as Tay, we expect him back at some point during the season. He's a guy that he got injured probably right at the very end of camp, with his foot. But the other guys, I think it was just an accumulation of probably things that happened in high school and 1 or 2 incidents that happened here that made us get an MRI of those shoulders and say, okay, we need to fix them.
That's so interesting to hear him talk about it like that, like basically, hey, he kind of had some pre-existing stuff, and that stuff happens time to time, maybe even more than you think. Like guys get something happens in high school and they play through it and they think they're okay, and maybe they get here and all of a sudden you get popped a little bit harder, or you go down awkwardly, and it's even more painful than it was before, and it gets even more injured than it was before. So no Bennie-Powell, no Prescod this year. And like he said, they were probably redshirt candidates anyway. Tae Johnson, probably along the same lines, in terms of a redshirt this year, even though it sounds like he is going to be available, or, at least recovered anyway from a broken bone in his foot at some point within the next several weeks. DK or Salty saying he doesn't think that we can top last night's show. I'm glad you liked last night's show, Salty. Fired up about it, like reiterating it. He's all in. No DK, I didn't ship the starter jacket. Sorry. I know it's the same colors as Lions, but I really don't think you'd like it, if I actually were to ship it. Some other guys that Marcus Freeman touched on. Howard Cross, there's been kind of some at least some rumblings, I guess, because of the fact that he was on a little bit of a load management schedule during training camp with a lower body injury. There'd been some question about him. Is he going to be able to be full go? Would there be any restrictions on him? No load management, no restrictions for Saturday. Marcus Freeman said he is a full go. Not worth playing a soundbite on that, because literally the only response that Marcus Freeman gave was, yes, he's going to be a full go Saturday night. Now, Gabriel Rubio, you might remember he broke a bone in his foot the first day of fall camp. So Marcus Freeman updated him, and also something to hear on Armel Mukum, who had a pretty good fall camp and is expected to contribute this season.
I would say Rubio's still probably about a month out, a month away. He's in his rehab phase as we speak. Armel Mukum has really stepped up. He's one of the guys that from year one to year two has done a really good job at physically developing, but also in terms of his production on the field. He's definitely improved tremendously, and will be a guy that will have a chance to help us on the field starting this game. And so we have a lot of confidence in that defensive tackle room, the depth of the room, even with Rubio being out for a month or so. But we obviously want him back as soon as we can.
Yeah, so there you go. A little update on Gabriel Rubio, on track to come back midseason. But in the meantime, Armel Mukum, all 6'3" and 302 pounds of him, going to be a contributor in the middle of that defensive line as well. And, like when you look at some of the guys in terms of full health, Mukum, 6'3", 302, Heinisch, 6'2", 278, Onye, 6'5", 291, Cross is 6'1", 288, Mills, 6'5", 295. So, Mukum, big body, biggest body there in the middle right now with Gabe Rubio out. Something interesting that they also did today at the end of the Zoom call, they sent an email about this as well. Notre Dame is going to begin, starting next week, they're going to start doing an player availability structure to streamline the communication in terms of injuries and stuff like that. So each Monday when they give us the game notes, they're going to give us a list of all the players who have availability affected for that week. They're going to classify them either as out for the season, out for that week's game, or questionable for that week's game, as well as what their ailment is. And this is, it's pretty common, like the injury report in the NFL, pretty common. They've been doing it for years and years and years. College football never had to. You could kind of use the OSHA as a shield and say, hey, we don't want to release them, but Notre Dame is going to do it. They're also going to do an availability update 60 minutes before kickoff of games this year as well. And they'd kind of been doing that anyway. Like if there were players who popped up injured on game day, like from late in the week and stuff like that, they'd been doing some updates game day mornings or, whenever before the game as well. This one from Doc Jack, is Jagasaw really out until December? That seems pretty serious for a Pack. I mean, that's the latest update we've got. No one has really asked about him lately. He might be somebody, that we ask about within the next few weeks just to see kind of how he's doing. But, it was a torn pectoral / shoulder. So I think it, might even be more than just the torn pec, because it sounded like there was a tear up into the shoulder as well. So, again, maybe we get an update on that in a few weeks, kind of follow that up, see how he's going. But as of now, that's the last word that we got on that. So some other comments for Marcus Freeman, getting away from the injuries. One of the questions, I know it's popped up here, I know I've seen it on the new Champions Lounge message board, the premium subscription board at Irish Breakdown. One of the questions that has popped up from time to time, where's Mike Denbrock going to be on game day, on the field or up in the press box? And along with that, where's the quarterback's coach, Gino Gaduli, going to be? Al Golden's going to be on the field. And it turns out that Denbrock will also be on the field with Gaduli upstairs.
In terms of who goes up and who stays down, I think it all starts with the comfort, but also what the coordinators feel is best for them to do their job and to elevate the play of the offense. And when we were together in Cincinnati, Denbrock was on the field the majority of the years that we were together, and Gino was actually up. And so they have a comfort in terms of, Denbrock being able to be on the field and see what he needs to see to call the game, to make the necessary changes and adjustments with the offense, but also having somebody upstairs that you have a level of comfort with that can give you feedback and see the things you need to see as a coordinator. Right? I was a coordinator that was on the field for the majority of my career, but you have to have people up in the press box that can give you the information that you need. And obviously he feels comfortable with Gino and Coach Golden obviously feels comfortable with the guys that are up in the press box for the defense.
So there you go. The coordinators are going to be down on the field. Gino Gaduli, quarterback's coach, is up in the box. And, of course, Joe with the follow-up. Good follow-up there, Joe. Who has the mic for the helmets then? The coordinators are going to have the mics for the helmets. So Mike Denbrock will be talking directly to Riley Leonard or whoever the quarterback is. Al Golden will be talking to the most likely the linebacker who is out there on the field as well with the green dot. In terms of, and we're going to get to more on that in just a second, speaking of the green dot stuff. But I mean, press box, it's all personal preference. Personally, maybe as someone who's, called a lot of games, sat up in press box, I'd rather have the elevated, view because you can see everything and, but it's preference. And the coordinators are going to be down there on the field, if Riley Leonard needs to talk to Gino Gaduli, all you got to do is get on the phone or put on the headset. It's not that hard. So that's the way that they're going to go with that. Coordinators are going to be down in the field. Personally, I don't think the field view is that great. I know everyone talks about how close it is and all that kind of stuff, but the actual view, I don't think is that great myself. Now, speaking of the headset communication, because that is going to be a new thing this year. So Freeman was asked earlier this week about who gets the green dots. To have the speaker in your helmet, you've got to have a green dot on the back of your helmet. That means you're the designated person on the field who can have the headset communication with the coaches on the sideline. So the quarterback is, pretty much always going to be the guy on offense. Linebackers obviously make the most sense on defense. Now, you can only have one green dot on the field at the same, at a time. Like Jack Kaiser is going to be the main green dot guy, but guys like Drake Bowen and Kingston Viliamu-Asa have also, they can have green dots if Kaiser's not on the field. So the question that I asked, you can only have one green dot on the field at the same time. So does that mean that those other guys, like, maybe even Kaiser for that matter, but if Kaiser is the main guy, but Bowen and KVA can also potentially have the green dots, but they can only have them a green dot on their helmet if Kaiser's not on the field as well, or another green dot on the field as well, does that mean that these guys are going to have two different helmets during the game? Exactly right.
And it's not limited to three. You can have as many green dots as you want, but only one can be on the field at a time, unless it's the kickoff. Kickoff, you can have everybody in the green dot. But the guys with green dots will all have two helmets. And obviously Jack Kaiser will start out with a green dot on defense, and the guys that have the chance to wear a green dot will wear their second helmet. And if something happens where, either Kaiser is out or we put somebody else in to be the green dot, the person wearing the green dot, then their helmets will change. But you have to have two helmets for the guys that have green dots.
Gotta have to have two helmets for the guys who are wearing the green dots on the defense. So you got that? So all those guys have to have two helmets. And, it's like Thurman Thomas. Yeah, remember him back in the Super Bowl? Like, I realize that's been a while. Maybe some younger people don't. But Thurman Thomas had a hard enough time keeping track of one helmet during the Super Bowl, let alone two helmets. So now you've got to have two helmets for the green dot guys because you can't have two green dots on the field at the same time. So that'll be curious. Like, are we going to see guys throwing one helmet off and, putting another one on as they're running on the field and that kind of stuff, or vice versa when they're coming off the field and whatever else. I'm going to be really curious to see how this looks, since you can only have one green dotted helmet guy out there on the field at the same time. But all these linebackers are going to have multiple helmets because of the green dots and the helmet communication and the speakers and all that different stuff. So finally, the running of Riley Leonard and what makes it unique.
I think it starts with his size. He is a physically impressive person, right? If he's almost 6'4" and 200 plus pounds that can take a hit. We don't want him taking a lot of hits. We obviously want him to get down when he has a chance to get down and limit the hits that a quarterback has to take. But he has speed, he has athleticism, and he's not afraid to run. Right? He wants to run. He wants the ball in his hand. So I think that's an added element to your offense. I don't want to see our quarterback running the ball every play, and that's not our plan. But to have the ability to have design quarterback runs or truly read defenders with a quarterback that can pull it is something that's going to help our offense have success.
Absolutely. It's going to help the offense have success, and I think it's going to be a huge factor in this game, especially if there is rain, to have a quarterback like Riley Leonard with his running ability and have the ball in his hands. He averaged 5.6 yards a carry 2 years ago in 2022 when he played the full season. And I know like people want to point to his stats last year and all this different stuff, but in the 5 games before he got hurt against Notre Dame last year, 47 carries for 326 yards. That's in 5 games. So like multiply that out and the pace that he was on, he was on pace to be over 800 yards in a season if he hadn't got hurt at the end of the Notre Dame game. He was averaging 6.9 a carry before that injury. And I just was going to say, I wasn't sure if I'd seen DJ post anything. I knew I'd seen DK post something, but DJ was talking about the Connor Wigman numbers, and I went and did the splits, because like you look at what's the knock on Riley Leonard? The accuracy. Well, you can live with the little bit lower accuracy, if you're able to hit some deep shots from time to time. He's not asked to run a West Coast offense. There's not going to be all this precision timing patterns and all this different stuff. That's not what he's going to be asked to do. Riley Leonard completed 57% of his passes overall last year. He was 62% before the injury, 57% in the 2 games after the injury. He was almost at 64% in 2022. Flip that over to Connor Wigman, who's going to be asked most likely to run more than he's ever had to run before because he's in Colin Klein's offense now, and the quarterback is asked to do a lot of running in this offense unless they're going to change plans, and Colin Klein's not going to do that. But Wigman, 9 career games, just under 62% overall. 56% is his completion percentage against Power 5 teams, 76% against Group of 5 teams. So he's 20% better against Group of 5 versus Power 5 in the 9 games he has played. 62% overall. So it's lower than Riley Leonard, but everyone's acting like Connor, not everyone, but I guess the farther south you live and the more in SEC country you live, everyone's acting like Connor Wigman is the most accurate quarterback in the world, and Riley Leonard, couldn't hit the open broadside of a barn, with a pass if he threw it. But when you look at just the numbers, and Riley Leonard has played in almost 3 times the amount of games that Connor Wigman has played in, and his completion percentage is better. And you throw in the fact that he's a dual threat quarterback, as Mike Denbrock would tell you earlier this week. Dual threat. He's not a running quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback. But so between those two, Riley Leonard is the more accurate quarterback of the two, and he's got the multi-dimension, of being able to run. He is an elite runner in terms of quarterbacks in college football. So Doc says, I like you calling him Wigman. I mean, it's like, this is another thing. Like everywhere I turn, I see a different pronunciation for his name. Is it Wigman? Is it Wegman? Is it Wigman? Everyone has said it a little bit differently. Carter Carls included, who we had on earlier this week. So some thoughts from Marcus Freeman. Final thoughts before the game. 7:30 kickoff. We are just a little bit more than, as of right now, as I speak, we are a little bit more than 50 hours away from kickoff. Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Don't forget, Friday, countdown to kickoff is going to drop on our IB platforms. It'll be up on YouTube. It will be, of course, on the podcast platforms and all that. It's not a live show because we have to, Brian does his own show on Fridays, and we have to work around the schedules of my co-hosts, Vince and Jesse. So we're not always recording at the same time. We have to have some flexibility in there. So the show will be up, though, and you'll have plenty of time to watch it or listen to it prior to Saturday's game. So look for that coming up. In the meantime, who's ready for some we in, we out? Tommy, did you ever find the we in, we out thread on the Champions Lounge? I hope you did. Hope you were able to find it. Let's go to the questions. Let's go to the phones. Let's just fire it up with Beezer 12. What is this? Beezer 12 washing beard. It's a hell of a handle. I don't think I've ever seen that one before. We in, we out. Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, and Jadarian Price will all score a touchdown on Saturday. I will give you two of the three of those, but I'm not going to give you all three because, again, without revealing my score, which will be revealed both tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow when Brian puts out our predictions. Fridays, I think, is when he puts out the predictions on the website, and then it'll be in the Countdown to Kickoff show as well. I don't have many more touchdowns than that scored. I can see Riley Leonard running one. I see Love or Price scoring one, but I also see either Mitchell Evans or one of the wide receivers scoring at least one. So I'll give you two of those three, but I've got to be out on all three scoring a touchdown Saturday night. Another one from Beezer. We in, we out. The Notre Dame defense will force 2 turnovers on Saturday. I am in on this. I am big in on this. And as I've said before, I think if this game turns into a bigger margin than a lot of people are expecting, Notre Dame fans notwithstanding, because I know a lot of Notre Dame fans are expecting a pretty good margin or pretty good scoring output. Gee, I'm shocked. Texas A&M fans think it's going to be lopsided or high scoring in one direction. Notre Dame fans think it's going to be high scoring, lopsided in the other direction. But I think if it gets to that, it's going to be because of turnovers. I'm fully in on Texas A&M's front on their defensive line. I think most everybody is, but I'm more in on Notre Dame in totality, the totality of the defense, and the fact that you got a ball hawker at the back there in Xavier Watts, and you got a guy in Adon Schuler who, what did he do when we got to see him late in the spring? For some turnovers of his own. I think both of those guys are going to be crazy good back there. And then you throw in Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray. I mean, I don't see a good matchup for Texas A&M's receivers against Notre Dame's secondary. Notre Dame's linebackers, I think, are the position group to look at on Notre Dame's defense. I don't think it's going to be a big weakness, but there is some inexperience, and they're going to have to adapt and adjust to what Colin Klein and Connor Wigman are trying to do offensively at the start of that game. But I will buy 2 turnovers created by the Notre Dame defense. Connor, I was just scrolling up on a Connor question here on the thread, and Connor says he sees a forced fumble and a special teams turnover. Hold that thought. and watch or listen to Countdown to Kickoff, because like that the special teams part is going to play in there. I can't blow like all the content before we get to it, right? There's like another day of content on this show before the game even shows up. So I like what you're thinking there, Connor. I like that. I like the thought process. So Connor's question: Notre Dame will win by 2 touchdowns but score less than 30 points against A&M. We in or we out? Had to hydrate. I'm just slightly out. Again, I can't give away my prediction yet, but I don't quite have Notre Dame winning by 2 touchdowns. And I do see them scoring less than 30 points. So I've got to be out on this, but it's going to be close. And again, like if there's a late turnover, I could see it swinging it where they do end up winning by 2 touchdowns. Doc Jack, Driscoll said 24-16. Well, he's already given out his prediction. So I'm not far off from that, but I'm not right on that number. Connor says he's predicting 27-13. I'm in between Driscoll. I'm pretty close to both of those. Go Irish. Go Irish says stop sandbagging. Look, I can't blow everything, right? We want you to listen. We want you to watch Countdown to Kickoff. So I can't give you all our predictions. Vince and Jesse are going to have their own as well. So if you want to lose money, listen to Vince. If you want to maybe win a little bit, listen to Jesse. Jesse's done well lately. He's got a wedding to fund. So he's trying to turn this into an art form right now. But yeah, I'm pretty close to what right in there between Connor, Doc, Driscoll, Joe's prediction. That's close. D-Rock, you're not far off. DJ, you're a little bit higher on Notre Dame's points, but I'm in that ballpark as well. So I think we're all thinking fairly similarly. We're not too far off. Domer Grizz, the storyline coming out of the A&M game will be something other than the offensive line, weather, or atmosphere at Kyle Stadium. We in or we out on that? I'm completely in on this because I think that a predominant story, like if you want me to give some predictions that, I'm not going to spoil in tomorrow's show, but I've already said it. And I think DJ and I are, pretty lucky. Connor Wegman, however you say his name, he's a good quarterback, but he's played in 9 games. This is a big environment for him as well. I know he beat LSU a couple of years ago, but he doesn't have great skill talent around him. I think his performance, and not in a good way, is going to be a huge storyline coming out of this game. And I think the performance of the Notre Dame offense is also going to be a big performance coming out of this. The offensive line is not going to get, they're not going to be perfect. So like, there are going to be some mistakes made by the offensive line because they are so young and they are so raw, as talented as they are. But don't go in expecting a perfect game. Go in knowing Texas A&M's defense is going to make a few plays over the course of the game. But I think overall, end of the game, we're gonna come out of that, maybe pleasantly surprised. I guess depending on sort of your perspective, I think a lot of people are going to be more than pleasantly surprised by what they get out of the offensive line. I don't think it's going to be the disaster, and they're not going to be completely overmatched like so many are saying by Texas A&M. Leahy NDC. A&M will be concerned with the run and mobile quarterback. They will try to run, stop, and blitz, which will open up the passing game. Everyone doubts. Riley completes 65% of his passes, lights them up through the air. I'm mostly in on that. I don't know if he completely lights him up through the air, but I definitely think Riley Leonard is going to have a better passing game than most people think. I do think A&M is going to commit to the run, try to shut that down. I think it's going to be hard because, again, if Mike Denbrock's not out there and all this 12 personnel that everyone's used to seeing from Notre Dame over the last few years, You can still run the ball by manipulating the box and spreading out personnel and lightening up the box from the defensive perspective and opening up run lanes that way. And when you've got a Jeremiah Love in the backfield or a Jadarian Price in the backfield and a Riley Leonard, I think it leads to what should be, even if they think they can shut that down, I think Riley Leonard's going to be able to hit plenty of passes in that passing game with this completely new look receiver core that he's going to have. Because that's another part of it as well. I think so many people are basing their opinion on what they think Notre Dame's receivers are based on last year without looking at the fact, oh, you brought in Chris Mitchell. Oh, you brought in Jaden Harrison. Oh, you brought in Bo Collins and Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison. By the way, they're not too bad themselves. And it's going to look a lot different. I think it's going to catch a lot of people nationally by surprise. A tonsil. Man, Andre, we in and we out. Jeremiah Love will catch a touchdown and run. Oh, catch a pass and run a touchdown in the game versus A&M. I think he's going to score a touchdown. So somewhat in the middle there, yes. I think he's going to catch a pass, yes. So I think he's going to score a touchdown, so I'll be in for that. We in, we out. Jeremiah Love will have 100 yards receiving and 100 yards rushing. Sorry, Andre, I've got to be out on that. I don't see 100 receiving and 100 rushing against that defense because, again, it's not steel curtain defense, but it's a good defense. I don't think that Jeremiah Love is going to have that kind of numbers, especially when you've got your next question is about Riley Leonard. So I'm out on Love, 100 and 100. I do see him with the opportunity to combine for somewhere around 150-ish yards, like 150 or so total yards. I would be in on that, but I can't go 100 and 100 rushing and receiving for Love. We in, we out. Riley Leonard will have 300 yards passing and 75 yards rushing. I've got to be out on this as well, mostly because Riley Leonard, I think he's had 3 career 300-yard passing games against Wake Forest, Kansas, and Temple. Not exactly light them up defenses. So those are the 3 teams in his career that he's had 300-yard passing games against. That's not really his thing, because, again, when you factor in the rushing, Joe says 225 and 60. I think that those are very attainable numbers, if not a little bit more from the rushing standpoint for Riley Leonard. Like I could see Leonard popping, like a 40, 50-yard run just on one play and then kind of churning out a few other yards. I could easily see him around 70, like 200 passing, 60 to 70 rushing would be something that I would feel really comfortable on with Riley Leonard. And we've actually got some of Leonard's season passing props and specific game passing props that we'll have in the Countdown to Kickoff show on Friday as well. So you can look forward to that. Final one from Andre. We in, we out. The Notre Dame defense will outscore the A&M offense. You just can't predict defensive touchdowns. I think the defense is going to put Notre Dame's offense in great position all night long. Yeah, but I would have to agree with DJ on this. I've got to be out on that. I think A&M's offense is going to score a little bit. So, I don't think that they're just going to dominate Texas A&M. I think that A&M will hit some plays. And I think most of it, I think the greater chance, like if you watch the Georgia Tech Florida State game, both teams just marched right down field and scored on their opening possessions. Like Florida State went right down and scored. And you're thinking, oh boy, here it goes. It's going to be a long day, Georgia Tech. But then Georgia Tech answered. They went down and scored right away. This goes back to the question that Marcus Freeman talked about on Monday this is a season opener, and you've got new offensive coordinators on both sides of the ball, and you've essentially got new quarterbacks on both sides of the ball because Wegman obviously didn't play all last year because of his own injury, and Riley Leonard, obviously, we know about his injury. But so you've got new quarterbacks, new coordinators on both sides of the ball. That first possession or two, little bit, I liken it to Navy. This is traditionally Navy. I'm not saying specific to last year Navy, but what like Navy, there's like when you're playing defense, it takes a little bit to get settled in. But season openers, they're gonna throw the kitchen sink out there. Everyone's gonna come with stuff that no one has seen before, and so odds are I'm not going to be shocked if both teams do what Florida State and Georgia Tech did and go down and score early on. But I've got full confidence that Al Golden and his defense are going to be able to adjust as the game goes on, because that's what he's shown that he's great at doing, is making those in-game adjustments and shutting things down, even if there's some early success. From Brother Thomas, Jordan Faison, if not the most productive, becomes the most valuable receiver on the team and is catapulted into national recognition by the end of the year. Well, we did some wide receiver predictions yesterday, and we were talking about Jaden Greathouse having the potential to be the 1,000-yard receiver for Notre Dame. But like Faison, I think because of what you're going to see from Faison, like the question here is most valuable receiver. As of going into this game, he's the number one punt returner as well. So I think that combined with the speed and the shiftiness that he has, like he's got the ability to get lost a little bit. And because he can play in the slot or play outside as well, he could very well end up being the most valuable guy on the team. Again, when you throw in the punt stuff and, you're saying catapulted into national recognition by the end of the year. So I'll buy that. You're not saying any specific awards. You're not saying he's going to win awards and all that kind of stuff. You're just saying he's going to get some national recognition. And I am definitely in on that. And Ryan says on the second part, that I can promise. And I think I'm more convinced about that as well. The most valuable receiver, that's the only place I get hung up on this, because I think he's going to be valuable. But as Salty will remind you, Jaden Greathouse, I think, is going to be really valuable as well. So I'm kind of in, kind of out. We don't have a hold on this, but that's where I'm going to be on this. I still like it. I still like the fact that Faison is going to be a big part of the offense this year. Brother Thomas also says, if, capital I, capital F, Notre Dame wins a championship, Irish fans, after years of outside abuse and self-doubt, become unbearable to the rest of the nation. I don't know how to break this to you, Brother Thomas, but the rest of the nation would probably already tell you that Notre Dame fans are unbearable. That's just the way it is. Like, just the whole independence thing. Like the fact that you always have to answer to is Notre Dame relevant? They're irrelevant. Join a conference. All this different stuff. Most other people already think Notre Dame fans are unbearable. But I'll just go in because I do think that it goes to another level for sure. So I'll go in on that. Jim Halloran. We in, we out. The young offensive line plays better than anyone expected. In on that. He says doesn't get dominated. No one is talking about the defense and D-line the O-line has been going against all camp. Well, we have a little bit here. If the O-line hasn't been a complete disaster in camp, how could it, he says? Offense won the Jersey scrimmage. Why would it be at Texas A&M? So basically the question is, we in or we out, the young offensive line plays better than anyone expected and doesn't get dominated. I am totally in on that. And in fact, look, the biggest question is on the outside at the tackles. Neither one of them has started a game before. But like I said to Vince earlier this week, everyone's talking about Knapp because he's a true freshman on the left side. But Emil Wagner, even though he's a couple years older, he hasn't started on the right side either. But those three guys in the middle are just going to maul people. That's just the way it is. And in this game specifically, like you can talk about how good Texas A&M's line is, defensive line across the board, and like the edge matchup with Scorton, like that's an advantage in Texas A&M's favor. But those three guys on the interior, you got a converted defensive lineman who, or a converted defensive end, I should say, moving inside because of his size. And one of the things that's kind of the knock on that guy is the fact that he hasn't always been that intense, and you're moving him inside. Notre Dame's going to win some battles in that interior Saturday night. Write that down. They're going to win some. They're going to have a lot of wins inside. In the offensive line, again, biggest question is going to be the tackles. I don't think it's going to be as bad as most people think, because I don't think that they would be putting those guys out there if they didn't have confidence in them. And your point about going up against Notre Dame's defensive line is completely fair. Now, the last couple of weeks, it's mostly been going up against a scout team, but when they were trying to earn the job, they were going up against one of the best defensive lines in the country. Thank you very much, DK. Remind me, bring that back up on Monday. I'm sure you will, especially if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty confident that I won't be. So, I know Salty likes to keep score as much as possible. Also from Jim, we in, we out. The defense gives up at least 2 20-plus yard runs with missed tackles and busted run fits. More hydration. Yeah, I think it's likely to happen. Again, going back to what I was talking about, especially early, because of this Colin Klein offense. And if you didn't see Jesse's whiteboard the other day, it is up, of course, on our YouTube channel. We posted it separately so you can go right to it. Like they're going to pull some guards. They're going to pull some tackles. They're going to have some false movements up front, what Jesse called eye candy, to try to get Notre Dame's linebackers going in one direction and then go the other direction, whether it's a pass play or a run play or whatever it happens to be. The question is going to be, are Notre Dame's linebackers on top of that right away? And if they're not on top of it right away, how quickly do they adjust? But I would give them, A&M, a good shot of popping a run or two of 15 to 20 yards early on, as Notre Dame is kind of getting, its feet set and figuring some of those things out as they look at that offense live for the first time. So I'll go in on that. Obviously wouldn't mind if I was proven wrong on that. DJ. I just found out, by the way, that DJ is formerly Chancey Stuckey's hoodie. And I see he still has a hoodie photo up there. DJ, of course, is in. We in, we out. Riley Leonard's QBR will be greater than Connor Wegman's. I'm hesitantly in. I think that, again, the biggest thing in, well, let me start with this. One, Riley Leonard's QBR doesn't matter as much because of the fact that he is a runner. He had a 93.2 rating last year against Northwestern. That was his best of the season. He's had passer ratings in the high 100s in all but one game back in 2022. His worst in 2022 was 79.8 in a loss to Georgia Tech. Like, his QBR was 91 last year against Clemson, but he ran for 98 yards. Connor Wegman, other hand, had a 22.6 quarterback rating against Auburn last year, but he's generally like mid 80s to mid 90s. I think because of the skill talent that Riley Leonard has, I think that his QBR should be at least slightly better, if not, like 8 to 10 points higher than Connor Wegman's. Because again, I'm not sold on that skill talent. And if it's raining, that hurts them even more. And it helps Notre Dame's secondary even more. So, but again, I go back to, because of Riley Leonard's running ability, his QBR isn't nearly as important as it should be for a guy like Wegman, who is still, even though he might be asked to run a bit more than he's used to because of the new offense that he's going to be in, he's still, mostly reliant on his arm. So I think that because Riley Leonard is the better quarterback and the more experienced quarterback, and he has better receivers to throw to, and he'll be going against a solid secondary that is not great, whereas Wegman has worse receivers to throw to and will be going against a secondary that should be one of the best secondaries in the nation this season. I think Wegman's will be lower. So I'm in, TJ. Probably maybe a little bit too long-winded. But again, to me, like QBR is not what I'm going to be looking at for Leonard this year, because of the fact that, obviously you want him to be efficient, but I don't think it's going to be as important because of the running element that he brings to the game. Jay Moore 1. We in, we out. Anthony Knapp will hold his own against Nick Scorton and end up a freshman All-American. I mean, this is going to be a huge test for Knapp right out of the gate. I doubt that they put Scorton exclusively over Anthony Knapp all night. I imagine they're going to move him around a little bit. But I do think that, hold his own. Yeah. I think he'll have a solid night. I don't think he'll be spectacular against a guy who led the Big Ten in sacks last season. But again, I don't think Scorton is only going to be opposite of Anthony Knapp. And there are some things that Notre Dame can do, to help him out. But I think Knapp will more than acquit himself in this game Saturday night, regardless of who's lined up against him. From Joe, we in, we out. The Leonard Elko saga will be brought up more than "you suck" from Leonard's mom. Man, this is like, I'm going to go in on this. I think you'll get maybe 3 "you suck" references. I'd be shocked if you didn't get 5 to 10 references to Leonard and Elko playing against each other. Especially if Texas A&M gets to Riley Leonard, they sack him, they stuff him, whatever. I'm sure they'll cut right to Mike Elko on the sideline and remind you that they played, with each other. They played together. Leonard played for him last year at Duke, and that connection and all that kind of stuff. I think that'll be more of a storyline than "you suck." But I do think "you suck" will come up. I would almost guarantee it's going to come up in game day. And by the way, there should be a Riley Leonard feature in game day Saturday. So look for that as well. I'm pretty sure they're going to do that Riley Leonard feature, little fishing that he did. Hesburgh Mafia. We in, we out. I win my 20-leg parlay that I put $20 on and win 10,000. I'm not overly confident in that, Hesburgh Mafia, but I'll give you some good juju, and I'll just go in. I'll say in on that. We know the more legs you add to the parlay, the greater your odds go down, which is why you have a chance to win so much. In or out, Jeremiah Love catches a receiving touchdown against A&M. I'll go in. Again, I'm not completely, how Love and Price are going to be used and all that kind of stuff. I think if it's a touchdown, it's going to be a long one, like a short pass that turns into a long touchdown that Love just outruns everybody to the end zone. But I'll go in on that. And then the last one from him, there'll be 2 Texas A&M turnovers during this game. Definitely in on that. I'm in on multiple turnovers for Texas A&M, especially if the weather is shaky out there. I wanted to check on something here real quick. Okay. From 3rd and 7 duo, we in, we out. A quarterback not named Riley Leonard will start 2 games this season for the Irish. I mean, so basically what you're asking is Riley Leonard going to be healthy this season? Because that's the only reason that a quarterback not named Riley Leonard would start. Sam Hartman made it all through last year. So I'm going to have to agree with DJ, Ryan, and Dimwitland. I'm going to be out. I'm going to say that like this whole, I think we're going to forget about Riley Leonard and the injury by the end of the season. I think that will be a distant memory, and Riley Leonard, will be the starting quarterback from start to finish. You know, and it's fair. TD4ND says want to be out. Again, I'm going the positive vibe. I'm not going to go negative 2 days before kickoff with any of this stuff. So I'm going to stay positive on this. Coach Vic 7, Jeremiah Love being a finalist for the Doak Walker Award and being a top 5 in the country in all-purpose yards. I meant to look up the all-purpose yards earlier, like what the leader was last year. I'll go in because I think that he's going to have a chance. Now, all-purpose, we're throwing. Do you mean? I assume you mean like yards from scrimmage. Man, I'm sitting here. See, I wish I wouldn't have looked because TD4ND says too many weapons, and I think you're right. Like Riley Leonard's going to take some yardage away with his rushing. Those receivers are too good. I think it's going to be really balanced. I think that like Jeremiah Love, I'm going to have to be out. Jeremiah Love's going to have a really good season. And I think that what he does in some of the electrifying type stuff that he's capable of doing is going to set him up for those kind of accolades next year, basically. So that's how I'll go on that. So I've got to be out, but that doesn't mean I don't think he's going to have a really good year. Oh, this is the long one. From Gavin KGD. We in or we out? I'm hearing and reading from Texas A&M fans that they believe their secondary will be a strength right out of the gate. But they also admit their lack of proven linebacker depth, and they are worried about our tight ends. With Denbrock's X's and O abilities, he will be able to exploit the middle of the field and make A&M safeties cheat enough inside that it leaves their corners in no man's land, which leads to a dynamic passing attack for Leonard and the new improved wide receiver room. So I want to make sure that I see this right. I think Jaden Greathouse and Mitchell Evans, and you can even throw Faison in there because he can get lost in the middle depending on what they do. I'm going to go in on this. I think that there are going to be a lot of mismatches that Notre Dame can create with that middle of the field with those 3 guys that I just mentioned. And then you throw Jeremiah Love in there as well with his receiving ability. I definitely think that like Greathouse, Evans, Love can drastically put Texas A&M's linebackers in a lot of jeopardy from a receiving standpoint all night long. You know, again, like does A&M load up, try to stop the run? Like, you know, they're obviously going to be very conscious of Riley Leonard. It's going to be on Riley Leonard to make plays with his arm, and I think that he will be able to. Look, I think A&M's secondary is going to be good, but they're not going to be anywhere in the ballpark of what Notre Dame's is. And Notre Dame's receivers are better than Texas A&M's receivers. You know, so like both sides of the ball, it's advantage Notre Dame when you're talking about secondary versus wide receivers. And again, when you throw in the versatility of the tight ends and the running backs, I think that there's going to be a lot of jeopardy for both A&M secondary and those linebackers like you're talking about. Another one from Gavin. We in and we out. Christian Gray will have his moment like Benjamin Morrison did against Ohio State in 22. 1 interception, 2 pass breakups, and under 50 yards allowed against him. I am mostly in on this. Again, like turnovers are so random and sometimes arbitrary, but if you know that Benjamin Morrison is on one side and you know that Xavier Watts is on the back end, you've got to find ways to avoid those guys as much as possible. And like the length that Christian Gray has against that's the one thing that A&M receivers have in their favor is they are big receivers. I don't think they're necessarily blazing receivers, but they're big receivers. But you're going to try to pick on the unknown, and Christian Gray is more unknown than Benjamin Morrison or Xavier Watts or, like even Jordan Clark. I will be curious how much the nickel even comes into play depending on what Klein does with the defense. Like, does he keep two tight ends on the field most of the night? Does he take one off? How's he going to play that whole thing? But I like Christian Gray to make. I'll say this. I will say Christian Gray. I'm going to go in on Christian Gray right now, like Vince did on Cam Hart last year. How about that? And I think Benjamin Morrison is already great. So big one coming for Christian Gray this season. And I look for him to make an integral play in the secondary Saturday night. Good question. I like it. All right, I got to turn the page here. Just a second. All right, this one from Jimbo Cooter. Oh, Jim Bob Cooter. We in, we out. Anthony Knapp will not give up a sack Saturday. Sorry, I've got to be out on that. Again, I think he'll hold his own. I think he'll have a good night. But odds are he's probably going to give up at least a sack Saturday night in that road environment against Texas A&M with a good pass rush group on the other side of him. That doesn't mean he's not going to, again, doesn't mean he's not going to have a good night, but I think he's going to give up a sack. So I've got to be out. JG Whitetown, we in, we out. Notre Dame defense has more than 9 3-and-outs against Texas A&M. I'm going out on that because I don't know, like 9-10 possessions, like you're like that's, especially if, like with Texas A&M and what they want to do running the ball, not quite to the same extreme as an Army or a Navy, the option teams, but they want to shorten the game a bit. So I've got to be out. I think they'll be, I'll say at least 5 3-and-outs. 9 is just too high though, because you could be looking at 9-10 possession max for the game. So I've got to be out on that. Tommy says he found it. Okay. Tommy says he found it. We in, we out. A Steyers-led watch party for the game Saturday. Well, the problem with that is Jesse is going to be floating on the river someplace, like I think watching the game with his phone. And the problem with my setup, I guess I could put the laptop on my lap as I'm watching the game, but my setup, I don't think it's as good as like what Vincent, like I don't like watching games on my computer for one thing. I've got a big flat screen. I've got multiple big flat screen TVs in my house for a reason, because I like watching things on big flat screen TVs with high definition. So I don't like watching stuff on my computer if I can help it. So my setup in my house is just not that great. Maybe you can convince Brian to splurge and, get me like some new entertainment center, another TV back here in my office or something like that. But I'll go out on that. But I will say, like, open for discussion if we can figure it out at some point. Ant VR says don't even need to be on camera. Well, what fun would that be? Like, isn't that like part of what the watch party is supposed to be? TD4ND, in out. Vince is bringing the beer to the party. One, Vince will only partake in a beer if like he has, like if Brian was a beer drinker, Vince would be. a beer drinker. Brian's not a beer drinker. Vince isn't going to be drinking any beer. And 2, he's sure not spending money to bring beer to the party. So I'm out on that. Sorry, Vince. I love you, but Vince will tell you. I think he's pretty straight up. He knows he's cheap. So just leave it at that. I don't have to sugarcoat it. I've known him long enough. I've known him for 20 years at this point. D-Rock Irish says Vince needs to loosen up. I don't disagree with that. See, like Brian and Vince, when they go to the tailgate parties, like Vince is always like, oh, there's all kinds of good food. It's like, I don't want food at the tailgate party. I can get food up in the press box. I can get it at home before I leave. I want a couple nice cold beers or a cocktail or like a Jell-O shot or something like that. I want to loosen up at the tailgate party. I don't need food. Like food is the last thing I want. Come on. Ryan says he probably drinks White Claws. Again, that would require Vince to spend money on White Claws. So I don't know about that. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I mean, I don't tailgate that often, but Ann says Sean's trying to get loaded at the tailgate. I mean, that's what tailgates are for, right? I mean, come on. We're definitely going to have to set one up, at least one this season out there. I think, I know Brian did a couple for some of the bigger games, but if we can kind of organize and figure out, get a lot of people to come out. I met Salty last year. I mean, how fun that was. I don't know, but he was there. But if we can get more people to come out, I think we could have a good time with it at a tailgate. If I remember right, it was still pretty warm out there as well. I think it was one of the early, it was probably the Ohio State game is when it was. Joe says, I want to see you at the Miami, Ohio game. We can do that. You know what we could also do? Like, if people are coming in for specific games, even if it's not like tailgating on Saturday, we could just do a meetup someplace at one of the localing watering holes here around town or around the campus or something like that. That's always fun as well. Now, again, I don't know if Vince, would come out. If you offer to buy him some, like some wings or something like that, he'd probably show up as long as you feed him. All right. So we'll take that up. That's not too far away. That's only maybe 3 weeks, something like that. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for bearing with me this evening on the solo flight. It's been a while since I did the solo, but some good stuff from Marcus Freeman pregame. A lot of good questions in the we in and we out. Appreciate you submitting those on the Champions Lounge as always. Ryan, Vince might actually drink the beer if you buy it for him. I don't, depending on what brand it is. I don't know. But I mean, that's it, Salty. That is it. I don't get smashed at the tailgates often, but when I do, it's Yingling Lager. Sign it up right there. I'll just have to wheel my cooler out, if I do it this year. All right, Andre, thanks for the questions, and thanks to everybody for being here. Be sure to hit that like button before you leave. We're getting closer. We are now just a little bit more than 2 days away from Notre Dame and Texas A&M kicking off the season. And again, don't forget, Friday, we will drop, I would say maybe around this time, Friday, probably between 6 and 7 o'clock. We'll drop the countdown to kickoff both on YouTube and the podcast platform. So look for them, and we'll have even more for you. It's going to be a 3-man party on the countdown to kickoff show on Friday. So otherwise, have a great weekend. It is Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the extended weekend. If you get one, we will be back on Monday. Even though it's Labor Day, Vince and I will be here because there's going to be plenty to talk about. We'll have Marcus Freeman comments and more, our own thoughts and all that different stuff on Monday's show as well. So have a good one. We'll talk to you in Countdown to Kickoff and IB Nation Sports Talk.